She had been crying her eyes out. Her eyes felt swollen while she sat across from the talking police officer. She wasn't listening, but he must have been assuring them that his team was doing the best they could. They needed to find her son and daughter. Time kept ticking until early evening, and all she could think was to question how she could have done this to them. Elsa and Petrova Parker were good people and only wished to give back when they decided to adopt their second child. This way, they were able to grow their family and help someone less fortunate. Nearing their mid-30s and having gotten married while in their 20s, they saw the time fit for adoption. It was unforeseen what this all will lead to in the future. It took a lot of research on adoption agencies before they found one they trusted operating in Ethiopia. Elsa and Petrova already had their first child, who was 8 then. Keegan was keen to have a sibling to care for. It wasn't long before the family found the next addition to their family. They had found their special someone, and they were filled with joy, but their happiness would not last forever. Her name was Mari. That summer, she was welcomed to the Parker family with open arms. She was a beautiful gem, precious and responsive, and everything they could have asked for from a daughter. Being 5 years old when they brought her in meant she and Keegan clicked instantly. Elsa and Petrova looked on, thinking it was sweet, but could never imagine what this seemingly harmless dynamic would lead to. Keegan and Mari did everything together, seemingly stuck together by glue. In exchange for him teaching her English, Mari showed Keegan how to play the games she knew from Ethiopia. He protected her as any big brother would. As they grew older and stronger, so would their bond. The uniqueness of their bond would go unnoticed until it was too late. Mari had come from Addis Ababa and a heartbreaking background. Her father had never been around, and her mother had died giving birth. Having never seen her parents, Mari was raised by her aunt. There was no more to her aunt, however. Her story was a sad one. At the age of 70, her aunt had been living with HIV/AIDS for over a decade. On top of that, she wasn't in the best financial position and struggled to raise her niece even with all the love she had for her. Unfortunately, there would be worse to come. Mari's aunt did her best to provide for her and give her the best life possible, even though she was sick. Eventually, however, as Mari grew older, she had to choose between Mari and her medication. She chose Mari, but soon started worrying about who would look after her when she was no longer there. As her condition intensified, she began making calls to an adoption agency, desperate for her prayers to be answered. They eventually were, but the knock-on effect would break the family years in the future. 16 years later, Mari was a third-year student from an acclaimed Midwest college, on her way to obtaining a degree for herself in actuarial science. That morning, her mom woke up to a letter that crushed her heart and decided to call the police. Elsa had been made aware of many cases where adopted kids stole money from their parents' bank accounts before running away, as well as cases of kids being involved in awful acts with family members. Even after being made aware, Elsa trusted Mari to never be like those other kids, but that letter told her otherwise. Dear Mom, the letter began easy enough, detailing why Mari wasn't at the table, as was her habit every weekday before she left for her classes. I've been thinking about my birth country a lot, continued the letter. I got a message from an Ethiopian family member on Instagram. My aunt, the one we believed died, has been alive. She only recently passed away. Elsa gasped, her eyes blooming with tears as she continued reading. The rest of the letter would leave her dashing for her phone. From the rest of the letter, Elsa learned that Mari and Keegan were on their way to the airport with a flight booked for Addis Ababa. Alarmed, the mom screamed for her husband, who came running. She threw the letter at him and fetched her phone, calling her kids as Petrova phoned the police. The parents would spend the morning trying Mari and Keegan's phones. Elsa knew Keegan would always stand by Mari no matter what. Although she should have been relieved that he was by her side to protect her, she couldn't stomach the idea of them flying across the world alone. The police flocked the Parkers' home, asking all the relevant questions before falling into their investigation. Petrova was already halfway into the city, calling all the airlines he knew that flew to Ethiopia. He'd find his kids if it were the last thing he did. Alone with a police investigator, Elsa got lost in her thoughts. She couldn't believe her daughter could do this to them. With puffy eyes, she sat numbly across from the officer. How could life be so cruel? A few hours passed with the police promising they were doing everything to find Mari and Keegan. Petrova had also called, assuring a distraught Elsa he was scouring the airport for their kids. Elsa curled into herself on the couch. Her kids were the best things in her life. Her family the only thing she lived for. She imagined them outside her ever-watchful gaze and broke down even more. God had given her the best children a parent could ask for. Why would He take them away from her? The day had turned into a dull evening when Petrova returned. Elsa didn't even look at him, but then she heard a familiar voice, a girl calling her Mama, the way her Mari always did. She turned to find her kids smiling beside her husband and couldn't help but rush to hug them. They cried in each other's arms, where Mari revealed that halfway to the airport, Keegan convinced her to go to their favorite baseball park where she cooled off. She apologized for letting her emotions get the better of her. Although she'd later travel to Ethiopia to visit her aunt's grave, she'd do it in the company of the Parkers, her family, and everything.